I'm John from Great Lakes Country, and today we're making dessert. Scratch-made, old-fashioned style vanilla pudding, homemade vanilla wafer cookies. We're even making the caramel sauce and the whipped cream for what will become the most delectable and delicious banana pudding dessert you've ever seen. Admittedly, I'm not a huge dessert guy, but I've never met a banana pudding I didn't like. Banana pudding is an incredibly popular dessert option commonly found on the menus at barbecue joints. And that's indeed where I first saw it. And that was probably only about, 6 years ago. I know there's people watching this from down south who probably can't believe that someone wouldn't be familiar with this really classic dessert in the United States. Well, I don't know what to tell you. I didn't know about it until pretty recently. Barbecue joints in general aren't nearly as common way up here in the north where I live, nor are any manner of soul food or southern cooking type restaurants that might carry this on their menu. In any case, banana pudding is what we're making today, and as I often do, I decided that I needed to make this as absolutely difficult on myself as possible. So no, I'm not using a package of Jell-O pudding mix. No, I'm not buying a box of Nilla Wafers or a tub of Cool Whip or anything else. We're making every single component of what is absolutely the best banana pudding I've ever had completely from scratch right here, right now. Now, there's a bunch of steps and a lot of things that we gotta get through, so I'm gonna go through everything pretty quick, but as thoroughly as I always do. But also, of course, there will be a link in the video description to the full recipe for everything if you missed something or you don't feel like writing anything down as I'm saying it, which you shouldn't because the recipe's right down there below. Anyway, enough of this intro. Let's get right into it and start making this thing. All right, so we've got a medium-sized saucepan on our little burner here, and before I turn the burner on, we're gonna combine 1/3 cup of white sugar, 2 tablespoons cornstarch, and 1/4 teaspoon of fine-grained salt. Give that all a quick whisk just to incorporate all those dry ingredients. And then we're drizzling in 1/4 cup of whole milk. Get that all whisked together until the wet and the dry are totally incorporated. Then we're whisking in 3 beaten egg yolks, just the yolks. Now I'm gonna get my burner turned on to about medium heat. And while whisking basically constantly, I'm gonna add in another 2 cups of whole milk. Now we're just gonna let this sit here and heat up over that medium flame, whisking pretty regularly for about 5 minutes until we just start to see this stuff thickening up a little bit. All right, our mixture started thickening up a tiny bit, so I've got the heat now reduced to very low, and I've switched to my rubber, or I guess silicone spatula. And now I'm gonna stir constantly for maybe about another 3 to 5 minutes. Switch to the spatula because I really wanna make sure that I can scrape and stir every edge and surface of this pan so nothing can stick to it, nothing can burn. And after about 5 or so minutes, our mixture has thickened up about as much as it's gonna thicken up in this pan. And it may be hard to see on camera, but if I drizzle some of it back into the pan, you can kind of see for just a second where it lands before it completely absorbs back in. It's not gonna be real noticeable, but you'll see a little bit of it on top of the surface there where you drip it in. Anyway, now we've got it off of the heat, and we only got to do a couple more things. First, we've got 3 tablespoons of butter, sort of just cut up into some rough-sized cubes. I'm gonna throw that in there and get it all stirred in until it's totally melted. And finally, our vanilla extract. This is 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. I guess you could use imitation stuff if you wanted, but why would you want to? We'll get that all stirred in there. All the ingredients are in now. So now we just need to transfer this into a different container. And as we do that, we're going to run it through a fine mesh metal strainer, just on the chance that there's any bits of lumps or cornstarch or anything else in there that didn't fully and completely dissolve. You could consider this an optional step, but I definitely think it helps. And there's definitely a few little clumpy bits stuck in this strainer, so I definitely recommend doing this. Now our vanilla pudding is done, and we just have to let it chill for a good few hours in the fridge until it firms up a little bit more and is delicious and ready to use. And of course, I'm going to put some plastic wrap on top of this before it goes into the fridge. But I'll mention it's a good idea to try to get that plastic wrap pushed down such that it's basically touching the top edge of the pudding, because this is going to prevent that weird pudding skin from forming. And maybe you like pudding skin, but it's really not going to be especially helpful for our banana pudding dish. So into the fridge it goes, and we can move on to the next step. Okay, pudding's done, it's in the fridge cooling, and now we're gonna move on to our second component, which is the homemade Nilla wafers. All right, so I've got the KitchenAid mixer out, and we're gonna start mixing up the batter for these wafers. Starting by going in with a ½ cup of room temperature butter that I've just cut up into some slices, along with 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now I'm gonna get the whisk attachment on here and just start blending this up on pretty low speed until all that butter is whipped up with that vanilla extract. And after that butter's looking pretty beaten, I'm gonna start gradually adding in my powdered sugar. So I'll just keep the mixer running and add a little at a time until I've added 1 1/4 cups of that powdered sugar. And I'll just let the KitchenAid keep doing its thing until my mixture is starting to look kind of fluffy. Then, while still mixing, I'm adding in 2 eggs. Once that's looking nice and smooth, we can get our other dry ingredients going. And before I add the other dry ingredients to the batter, I'm going to combine them first. And while doing so, I'll run them through my metal strainer just to kind of sift them. So we've got 1 1/3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/8 teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon baking soda. And we'll just get that sifted into this bigger bowl real quick. Now I've got the mixer going again, and I'm gonna start adding this flour mixture. I'll do it in about, 1 scoop at a time till it's all incorporated. And I'm gonna take care to try to not totally over mix it. We just wanna get that flour mixed in until everything's incorporated, the flour's hydrated, and so forth. All right, and here's the batter for our homemade Nilla wafers. And now we just need to get these laid out on some baking sheets into our cookie shapes. And the probably ideal way to do this would be with a piping bag, but I am not very good at using piping bags. However, I used to be a professional house painter, which means I'm pretty handy with a caulk gun. And this thing right here is basically a food grade caulk gun. It's actually sold under a label called a Jerky Gun, and it can be used for making certain kinds of jerky style meat sticks, but I found it very useful for all manner of other kitchen things, including using instead of a piping bag. And of course, that just means I have to get this caulk tube thing loaded up with all my batter. And you can make fun of me if you want, but I'm a firm believer in if it's stupid but it works, well, maybe it's not that stupid. Now we've got some baking sheets with silicone liners on them. Of course, you could also use parchment paper instead. And now we just need to start laying down our cookies. So I just need to do a little bitty drop, about maybe 1 1/4 inches in diameter. And as these things cook, they're going to spread out quite a bit and flatten out. So I do want to leave a little bit of room around each one. And no, these probably aren't very consistently sized because I'm not much of a baker and I don't really have an eye for it. But when we bake them, they're going to be delicious, and that's all I care about. Well, that's about the least symmetrical way I could have possibly done that. Oh well, not worried about it. Now, these are just going into an oven preheated to 350 degrees for about the next 12 to 14 minutes, or until they're starting to look a little golden brown. And here we have our baked, very nice looking homemade Nilla wafers. Probably a little bigger than I need. I'm gonna be doing a second batch, so I'll probably go a little smaller on those. Got a little close together on these two, but that's okay. So now I'll just move these over to a wire rack and let them finish cooling. And in the meantime, I'll get my other batch going. Okay, and there's all of our finished homemade Nilla wafers. Got a couple of different sizes in here. Those are the big ones that I made the first time. These ones are a lot more like what I need for this. But having too many cookies on hand is never a bad thing. I've got plenty to work with here. All right, Nilla wafers are done. They look great, they taste great, and we're gonna move on and start making our delicious caramel sauce. I think I just said some combination of caramel and caramel. I don't know what that was. It's caramel. We're making caramel sauce. For our caramel sauce, we've got ourselves a medium-sized little saucepan with a pretty heavy bottom, and into it, we're adding 1 cup of white sugar. And again, make sure that you're using white sugar that's labeled 100% pure cane sugar. Now we're turning the heat to about medium, and we're gonna start heating up this sugar. And with our silicone spatula or wooden spoon, we're gonna pretty much constantly move this around over the next 7 to 10 minutes. This sugar is gonna go through a couple different stages. It's gonna start to get clumpy, then it's gonna start to turn kind of brown, and then ultimately it's gonna liquefy into what will be the base of our salted caramel sauce. Just be sure not to have your heat too high, and be sure to always keep moving it around, because it can be kind of easy to scorch and burn this sugar on the bottom of your pan, and then that's going to ruin the whole batch. So we'll fast forward a couple minutes when this sugar starts doing something. Well, we're about 3 minutes in, and you can see that this sugar is starting to get very clumpy. That's exactly what we want, and we just need to keep moving it around, keep cooking. About 5 minutes in, and you can see that this sugar is taking on quite a bit of color. Not sure how well it's coming out in this video, but it's definitely not white sugar anymore. We're somewhere in the medium brown range, and it's rapidly getting darker with each passing minute. So as I let it continue cooking for just another couple more minutes, all of this is melting down, and it's already started to do that, and it will ultimately completely liquefy. Still stirring, still moving it around, just waiting for all the rest of that remaining sugar to liquefy. Okay, sugar's all melted, and now I'm gonna start throwing in some slices of room temperature butter, 6 tablespoons. And as I throw those in, they're gonna start spattering a bit, so just be careful. And now I'm switching to a little sauce whisk, and I'm stirring. Never stop stirring. And once all that butter is melted in, we're going in with 1/2 cup of room temperature heavy cream. And I'm just gonna add a little at a time, always whisking, always stirring. And each time I splash a little in there, we're gonna bubble up and get a little spatter. So just be careful. And when I splash some in, the steam coming out of that is incredibly hot, so watch your hand. All right, our cream's all in, and now we're just gonna let this come up to a boil, which it's basically at already, and we're gonna let it boil for about a minute. And at this point, I am gonna stop stirring. This is pretty much the only time that you're not stirring, is during that 1 minute when you wanna let it boil. And once our minute is up, I've got my pan taken off the heat completely, and because I promised a salted caramel sauce, we're gonna add in 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. Get that all stirred in nicely. And now our beautiful caramel sauce is technically ready to use, but I do advise letting it sit a while to cool down. Warm caramel is amazing. Piping, smoldering, boiling hot magma caramel, not quite as much. Though because it will pour most easily when it's pretty hot, I will go ahead and transfer all of this into a pint jar while it's still nice and pretty much as thin as it will ever be. And there we have it. I'll just let this sit on the counter for a little while till I'm ready to use it. And by the way, you can totally store this in the fridge, put a lid on it, wait till it's a bit more cool, of course. And then after it's been in the fridge, it's of course gonna get a lot more firm. So just take the whole jar, set it in a little pot with some warm water for a little while. It'll soften right back up, be warm and delicious. All right, caramel sauce is done and it's cooling, and there's only one more component we have to make. And that's the homemade whipped cream, which will actually be by far the easiest thing that we're doing today. So into the stand mixer, we've got 1 cup of heavy cream, and it's ideal if you let it sit on the counter a little while to start to get a little closer to room temperature. And to that, we got 1 tablespoon of white sugar and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Yes, this is a very vanilla heavy dessert. Got the wire whisk, and we're gonna blend on pretty much medium speed for the next 5 to 6 minutes until this just all turns into whipped cream. We're looking for some very thick, fluffy whipped cream with very stiff peaks, as they say. And there we have it. Delicious. And I think at long last, we're finally ready to put together our banana pudding. I really like when banana pudding is served in a little parfait cup or something like that, and a wide mouth pint jar is gonna work perfectly for this. And the first thing I have to do is drizzle in a little of that caramel. I'll go up the sides just a little bit and put a nice little coating on the bottom of that jar. Now I'm bringing in those homemade Nilla wafers, and I just need a little base layer of those cookies at the bottom of this jar. And next up, it wouldn't be banana pudding without the bananas. And it's kind of funny that this is called banana pudding, and considering that the bananas constitute basically the smallest of all the ingredients in this thing. Now, of course, we need a layer of that vanilla pudding. And because I'm trying to make a nice looking presentation here, I've got my ridiculous food caulk gun back out here. And we're just gonna go in with a nice layer on top of those wafers and the banana slices. Then we need another layer of cookies and banana, followed by some more pudding. And that will bring us right about to the top of the jar. But of course, we have to leave some room for the whipped cream. And we'll add a nice layer of whipped cream now. And if you think I didn't have a second food grade caulk gun, well, you would be sorely mistaken, because that's exactly what I have. All right, 3 more things. First, a light sprinkle of some crushed up Nilla wafers, because who doesn't want that? And then a real light drizzle of some of that caramel. And just to make sure that the presentation is on point, we'll stick 1 more little Nilla wafer right on top. So there we have it. What's not to like about that? Well, nothing. And that's why it's finally time for me to grab a spoon and start devouring. All right, I'm ready. Let's get into this. Oh, there's so many layers. I think I just got a mouthful of whipped cream on that one. Let me see if I can dig down and get one of these Nilla wafers. Ah, that is so good. It's hard to make a bad banana pudding, but there's absolutely a way to make the best banana pudding. I don't see nearly enough people doing the crumbled Nilla wafer crumbs on top, or even the caramel sauce for that matter. You know, a pint jar is probably too big of a container for anything that a rational person could call a single serving, but I don't know what to tell you. It's so good, and I'm certainly gonna eat this entire thing. And maybe the craziest part about making all of these components completely from scratch is, oh my God, hang on. It's my doctor calling. Hang on 1 sec, sorry. Hello? Yes, this is him. Okay, what do you mean? Are you sure? Well, when did that happen? Now, what do you mean? No, like right now? Like right this minute? Well, yeah, it's banana pudding. Every single ingredient is completely filled with sugar. I don't understand how you could possibly know. All right, well, I guess thanks for letting me know. All right, bye. Well, apparently I'm a diabetic now. But why would we let a little thing like that get in the way of a good time? Anyway, of course, this banana pudding isn't good for you. It's filled with nothing but sugar and butter and cream and milk. It's clearly not a diet food, but it is the most delicious version of a classic banana pudding you could ever want. So, if you want to see a written out recipe for every single component that I made here in this video, of course I'll put a link to it in the video description below. And be sure to like and subscribe and stay up to date with all our latest stuff, including future cooking and food videos. And consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/GreatLakesCountry. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'm John, and this is Great Lakes Country.